So this week we're going to look at poetry by two famous poets. One, Robert Burns, who lived between 1759 and 1796, and the other, Lord Byron. Burns is a unusual case. We thought we'd do that having done one Welsh poet and one Irish poet. But Burns is really the national poet of Scotland, and he's something completely unusual in English poetry. Indeed, one could argue it's not really pure English poetry. It's full of Gaelic words, certainly of Scottish pronunciation, and he is much loved in Scotland, or by Scottish people throughout the world. The Scottish diaspora, as you know, is very large, especially in America. And of course, he's associated particularly with Burns Night, which is the sort of national feast of Scotland. His Auld Lang Syne is sung every New Year's Eve. And I suppose the connection with song is also very strong. Many of his poems have been set to music. He wrote songs as well. So they're very melodic in their rhythm. And I've chosen two love poems, really, and one very amusing poem, To a Mouse. So I'm going to start with the two love poems and immediately say that one should not take this as an example of perfect Scottish pronunciation. Scottish pronunciation is incredibly difficult to get right, partly because some of the consonants are no longer the same as in English. They roll their R's much more distinctly. It's a much more guttural sound, and many consonants are elided, so they just disappear. Double L's, F's vanish, and you've got three words. Full of care, for example, is full of care. It's full of care, runs straight the way through. So this is called the Banks of Dune. Dune was a river in Ayrshire, his local river. Ye banks and braes of bonny Dune, how can ye bloom so fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little birds, and I so weary for care? Thou break my heart, thou warbling bird, that wantons through the flowering thorn. Thou minds me of departed joys, departed, never to return. Oft have I roved by bonny Dune, to see the rose and woodbine twine, and ilka bird sang o' its love, and fondly so did I o' mine. With lightsome heart I pushed a rose, for sweet upon its thorny tree, and my false lover stole my rose, but he left the thorn with me. And the second, another love poem, very famous love poems, set to music many times, including by Bob Dylan. My love is like a red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my lonely love, and fare thee well a while, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. well, they're beautiful and would be even more beautiful sung by a Scotsman. I'm going to end this brief tour of Robbie Burns with this poem To a Mouse, which I think Krystyna Zabawa was telling me is subject of an essay by Baranchek. So this is To a Mouse, on turning her up in her nest with the plough. Wee sleeket gowrin timorous beastie, oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou needna start away so hasty with blickering brattle. I would be loth to rin and chase thee with murdering battle. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I doubt no wiles, but thou may thieve. What then, poor beastie, thou mun live? A daemon ichor in a thrave, some request. I'll get a blessing with the lave and never miss it. Thy wee bit housey too in ruin, it silly was the wind a strewing, and nothing now to big a new one, of foggage green, and bleak December's winds ensuing, but snell and keen. Thou saw the fields laid bare and waste, and weary winter coming fast, and cosy here beneath the blast, thou thought to dwell, till crash, the cruel coulter passed out through thy cell. That wee bit heap o' leaves and stibble has cost thee many a weary nibble. Now thou's turned out for it thy trouble, but house so howled to thole the winter's sleety dribble and Cranbrook cold. But mousie, thou art know thy lane, in proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men gang after glagly, and leave us naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Still thou art blessed compared with me, the present only toucheth thee, but och, I backward cast my eye on prospects drear, and forward, though I cannot see, I guess and fear. Well, I would dread to hear what a Scotsman would think of that pronunciation. And as you see, many of the words are completely unintelligible in English, let alone in Polish. So I think you'll probably have more success with the Polish translation of that. I want now to turn to another poet who's really better known in Europe in a way than in England. And this is Byron, George Gordon, Lord Byron. And he actually lived between 1788 and 1824, so he was exact contemporary of Percy Bysshe Shelley and John Keats, but very much from a very different class. Keats, he had an aristocratic background, was a very famous lover, and traveled in Europe and fought for Greek independence. So he's in a way much honored in Europe. And of course, again, his poems have been set to music or inspired music. For example, Berlioz is very inspired by Byron almost as much as by Shakespeare. And his Byron's Childe Harold Pilgrimage, when the first volume came out, a cabinet meeting broke up so people could go and buy the first edition. I think it's the only time in English history that this has happened. So his poems, particularly Don Juan and Childe Harold, were very, very famous at the time. But I'm just going to read one very short, or two very short poems, again, love poems. The first, She Walks in Beauty Like the Night. She She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, that tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. And the second is a very interesting poem because he uses a very simple meter, but varies the meter with feminine endings in the first and third line. And that's then reversed in the final stanza. When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken-hearted to sever for years, pale grew thy cheek and cold, colder thy kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken, and share in its shame. They name thee before me, a knell to mine ear. A shudder comes o'er me, why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met, in silence I grieve, that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears.